Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today is Tag Tuesday, and in my never-ending effort to catch up on tags, today I'm going to be doing a tag that I've received a couple of times. This one is called Don't You Forget About Me. This was created by Jolene at Bookworm Adventure Girl, and it was inspired by the Bookish Texan. So I'll put their links down below. I was tagged by Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, by Marilyn Maya Mendoza, by Gavin at Genre Books, by Ellen Made Book Club, and by Sue Jackson. So I think this is a tag that I can't forget about. So there are only a couple of prompts, so this is going to be a quick one. So the first one is clean slates, books you've read that you don't remember anything about. So I went into my journal, my book journal, just to kind of flip through and see things that I've read. I just went back like the last 2 years, and sadly, I found a couple of mysteries that I read that I really liked at the time, and I don't have any memory of those books or of reading them. One of them was P.D. James' A Mind to Murder, and one was Patricia Cornwell's Autopsy. These are both authors that I like, and I've read many of their works. But I think I find that the plots run together in my mind. In these two instances, sadly, I can't remember what the books are about. That could be a function of me and my age also. Number 2, Genie's Lamp, books you wish you could forget. I don't have a lot of books that I wish I could forget. I just remember being very young or too young to read The Exorcist. I think one of my older cousins was reading it, and I picked it up while I was staying with them, and I don't even think I finished it. I was so horrified by what I was reading, and I think that early experience is part of why I am so terrified of the horror genre and why I'm sticking to friendly ghost stories and cozy horror for this horror mayhem. Number 3, Forgotten Gems, books you think need more love. I had 2 that came to mind. The first was John Irving's A Prayer for Owen, Meany. I'm a big John Irving fan, and this is one of, I think, my 2 favorite books that he has written, and certainly one of the best, one of the most powerful. And while I see this appearing on lists from time to time, I don't hear people talking about this anymore. There was a time when we used to teach this. We could teach this in AP English and in contemporary fiction with seniors. And as time wore on, it became more difficult to teach because kids weren't into it. They didn't want to read a book this long. But it's not just that. It really is that I used to hear people talking about this book a lot. I used to hear people talking about John Irving a lot more than I do now, and I just love him. I think he's a wonderful American novelist, and I think this is a book that needs more love. It's a book I come back to from time to time and reread, and I'm always pushing this on people and wishing that other people would read it also. And another book that came to mind when I saw this question was Stephen King's The Green Mile. Now, I don't think anybody would say that Stephen King isn't read widely, because he is. But especially since I've been here on BookTube, and I'm very aware of a lot of people reading Stephen King and talking about Stephen King, I almost never hear anybody talk about The Green Mile. And I think this is, I mean, it's not one of his hardcore horror books, but it is a book with a lot of deep themes and a real fantasy, supernatural, kind of supernatural presence in it as well. This was a book that at one point a colleague of mine and I started to teach in a fiction course with seniors, especially reluctant readers, and they loved this. They gobbled it up, so much so that students in other courses were asking when they were going to read it, and could they read it too, or could we read it in these other courses as well. So I don't know why more people aren't talking about this Stephen King when people are talking about Stephen King, and there's a lot of talk about Stephen King. Okay, those are my two that I think need more love. Number 4, Forget-Me-Nots, books you will always remember. Now, I just finished this one last week, but Les Miserables, I think, is a novel that is going to stay with me forever. Reading this book was an experience. It was an event. I couldn't wait most of the time to get to this book, and I could devour 100 pages, 200 pages in one sitting. I think there was a day where I read for 5 hours straight. I can't tell you when the last time I had that kind of an experience was. This is so massive in scope. We're still talking about it in a Voxer group that we have where everybody has finished it. I think this one's going to stay with me for a long, long time, and I think I will revisit it. Then I have a couple other books that I have talked about in some other videos. This is my parents' first edition of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. And in another earlier video, I talked about the very first time I read this book. And I was a kid. I had just watched the movie with my whole family because my brother had to watch it for high school, for the class that he was reading the novel in. And I found this book on my parents' bookshelf, and I was a kid. I was in 4th or 5th grade, I think, and I just have such a vivid memory of racing home from school, and settling in my father's den and just reading and getting lost in this book. Now, I read it many times after that. I read it in school when I got to high school. I taught it many times, so I reread it to teach it. I mean, it's a book that I have revisited many, many times, but it has such a powerful place in my reading life that I think it's a book that I will never forget. And talking about the experience I had of I don't think I can hold these both at once, that I had of reading Les Miserables, it was a similar experience to what I felt as a kid, coming home from school, racing home so that I could pick this book up again and continue reading it. That's kind of what I felt reading this, and that's a magical experience. So another one is The Catcher in the Rye, and this is a very old edition of it that I found at a library book sale. That it cost 50 cents at the time that it was sold originally. I don't know what I paid for it. But this is a novel that had a powerful impact on me as a young teen. And it's a book that I came back to over and over again throughout high school. I identified powerfully with Holden Caulfield, and it was a favorite book of mine to teach when I taught sophomores in high school. I didn't teach sophomores in the last 15 years of my career. I taught mostly seniors, but when I taught younger kids, this was always a favorite book of mine to teach and a favorite book of theirs. It makes me sad when I read things now or I see things now about kids not liking this book or finding it dated or not liking Holden. That makes me a little sad. But this is a book that will always stay with me. And another book I have is a book that might not be as well known, and this is a memoir by Allison Smith called "Name All the Animals," and I don't hear much about it anymore. I don't see it on people's lists. But it had a powerful impact on me when I read it. It's a memoir about the author's loss of her brother, and how a family copes with that kind of grief. I've talked in another video about how I also lost a brother. I lost my oldest brother, the brother who gave me The Hobbit and the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy as a Christmas gift, and I think that I was a young adult when he passed away, and there wasn't much to find to read about the loss of a sibling, at least that came into my ken, but when I found this book, it is another book that I got lost in, and that just spoke to me on a really, really powerful level about a common experience that I had with the author. And for that reason, I will never part with this book, and I think the book itself will always stay with me. So that's it. That's the tag. So the last thing is it says to tag some cool people who love books. So if you're watching this and you haven't done this, forget me not, or don't you forget about me tag, I hope that you will do it. But I am going to tag a few people. I'm tagging Books and Bocadillos, Nicole at Noteworthy Fiction, Faceless Book Reviews, Joshua Crebo Reads, Through the Pages with D, Jess Book Girl TV, and Read Becca. And anybody else, if you're watching this and you haven't done it, it's a short tag, and it's a good one, and I hope that you'll consider yourself tagged as well. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.